Welcome to our third series of Amplify Voices of the Global Majority, focusing on the roots of yoga. My name is Kaveri Dada Barros, and I will be your host along with my colleague, Miles Newton, for our journey together through this week. And tonight, as the presenters of the ninth and final session of our 9-session series, we welcome Pandit Rajmani, Tigunait, and Ishan Tigunait, sharing a talk called Adversity to Opportunity, Lessons for Navigating a Turbulent World with an Ancient Wisdom Tradition. Once again, Kripalu has joined forces with changemakers around the globe who work to dismantle inequity, mitigate harm, steward the planet, prioritize collective wellness, and stress interdependent liberation. Throughout history, voices of global majority, Black, Indigenous, people of color, have been at the forefront of breaking down barriers of systemic issues that affect both the planet and humanity while ushering in radical change. Whether that has been through bringing yoga to the West or fighting injustice on the front lines of society. We are so excited to be here with you to explore the heart and soul of the ancient practice of yoga with an incredible and thoughtful panel of South Asian yoga teachers, practitioners, wisdom keepers, and lineage holders. Now is the time that requires us to listen, heal historical wounds, and to do something different. We enter this work as an act of community care because none of us can be well unless all of us are well. So again, welcome. We're inspired to be sharing this space with you. We are honored to gather today virtually located on the Berkshire Hills of Massachusetts, on the original homelands of the Stockbridge-Munsee Band of Mohicans. And on behalf of Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health, we invite you to use the link in the chat to learn about what land you are on and its indigenous inhabitants. Please take a moment to share with us the land you are calling from by typing it into the chat. Today, Kripalu works in reverence with these lands as a nonprofit educational organization dedicated to empowering people and communities to realize their full potential through the transformative wisdom and practice of yoga. Our Amplify Voices series has been made possible because of the generous gifts of our donors. We thank them, and we thank you all for your presence this evening. And as a part of this collective space we share tonight, we would like to center our online community agreements. So we are posting them in the chat for everyone. Please take a moment to read them over and know that by being here in this space, you acknowledge and are opting into them. And we thank you for that. Let us all take a moment to settle in a bit more together. Let's take 3 conscious breaths, collectively inhaling through the nose and gently exhaling through the mouth. You can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. Let's begin. Thank you all. With deep appreciation and reverence, we welcome Pandit Rajmani Tigunait and Ishan Tigunait as your guides for the evening. Pandit Rajmani Tigunait is the spiritual head and chairman of the Himalayan Institute and the successor of Swami Rama of the Himalayas. Lecturing and teaching worldwide over 40 years, he is the author of 19 books, including the groundbreaking commentary on the 3rd chapter of the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, Awakening Power in the Yoga Sutra, Vibhuti Pada 2022, following The Secret of the Yoga Sutra, Samadhi Pada 2014, and The Practice of the Yoga Sutra, Sadhana Pada 2017, and Vishoka Meditation, The Yoga of Inner Radiance 2019. He's a regular contributor to the Himalayan Institute Online Wisdom Library, the driving force of the Institute's global humanitarian projects, and the visionary behind the Institute's Sri Vidya Shrine in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. Ishan Tigunait received his first spiritual lessons from Swami Rama in the Himalayas and has continued his spiritual education for the past 30 years under the guidance of his father, Pandit Rajmani Tigunait. Ishan's passion is sharing modern reflections in the ancient wisdom of yogic and tantric traditions. Ishan serves as executive director of the Himalayan Institute and has been a driving force for the Himalayan Institute's humanitarian projects in Africa and India over the past 20 years. Ishan is committed to sharing the transformational power of yoga to unleash our full potential. During the chat with Panditji and Ishan's, during the presentation, with Panditji and Ishan, Miles and I are here to support your needs. Our info is in the chat. Please feel free to direct message us if you need anything. Towards the end of the session, there may be an opportunity to have questions answered that have been gathered by using the Q&A feature located in your Zoom toolbar at the bottom or at the top of your screen if you're on your phone. Please make sure to use this feature rather than typing any questions into the chat. Now, without further ado, I welcome Pandit Rajmani and Ishan Tigunait, everyone. Hello, Panditji. Hello, Ishan. Welcome and namaste.
Thank you, Kaveri. It is so wonderful, and all of you from all over the world, and those who are here in the United States, and attending it in the evening, and many other people in other parts of the world. Somewhere it's morning time, sometimes somewhere it is midnight. So welcome everyone. Ishan, you can start.
Sure, I'd love to. Well, it's a great pleasure to be with you all for this lovely evening together. You know, over the last several weeks, we've been talking a little bit about this broad theme of adversity to opportunity, especially in context to this broad vision of amplifying our voices as the global majority and some of the underlying visions of this conference. And I know you had a few personal memories you wanted to open with to kind of set the context for what we'd like to share tonight.
You know, as I was coming from my home to this place to attend this conference, it just so happened I started remembering my time with His Holiness Dalai Lama in January 2001 at the Kumbh Mela in Allahabad. It was a very amazing occasion. I invited His Holiness. He accepted our invitation. Then later I realized that better it will be good to hold our meeting and open to the public. So I requested a very influential Swami who had gigantic capacity to hold such events. So there, His Holiness came, myself, and head of that organization, his name is Swami Avadheshananda, Pilot Baba, 20,000-30,000 people from India, and 500 guests of the Himalayan Institute. It was very beautiful. I gave my presentation for 15-20 minutes. His Holiness spoke for 15-20 minutes. Then it was time for question and answer. Then someone from our audience, one of our American friend, guest of the Himalayan Institute, asked a question. Your Holiness, I understand Buddhism does not believe in God. So my question to you is, do you believe in God? Does God really exist? If He does not exist, then how is this world running so perfectly? And if God exists, then how does He look like? Well, His Holiness held my hand and raised my hand and his own hand up in the air. And he said, God exists or God does not exist. Leave it to us. You pay attention how to live peacefully. It is only when you have a calm and tranquil mind, you will begin to understand both this world in which we are living and the world which is much more subtle, intangible, and imperceptible. Of course, there was more elaboration. So this is what came to my mind when I was coming here, that how important is this understanding. Before I go into more detail of it, first I must congratulate Kripalu organization and so many of you who have made your commitment to organize and host this kind of conference. It's very, very, very pertinent, very relevant. This takes me to some more place. Before I came to this country, I already had my one PhD from the University of Allahabad in India. And soon after coming here, 2-3 years later, I joined University of Pennsylvania. And it was in somewhere in academic year of 1983 and 84, or maybe 85. I attended 1 year long a program called Pro Seminar every Wednesday, 11 to 1. There used to be a seminar. Most of it was offered by visiting professors from all over the world. Theme of that program was the role of Southeast Asia in shaping the socio-economic and political landscape of the world in next 50 years. It was very exciting, very informative, and academically very profound, and also charged with lots of issues. So even 35 years ago, the universities and colleges were kind of talking on this subject. That what is the condition of, what is the place and role of people of different colors? What is their contribution to the health, wealth, peace, and prosperity of the whole planet and those who inhabit it, those who live on this planet? Almost toward the end, I don't remember exactly from where this professor was. He must have been from Japan, if I remember well. He made a very, very powerful remark. And he started with something very amazing. He said, I come from a country and a society that has been heavily influenced by the ideology of Buddha. Therefore, what I'm going to present it to you comes out of Buddhist thought process from the teachings of Buddha. And there he gave a very unique definition of the word majority, global majority. And you imagine, it was 30 years ago, no, 40 years ago. 40 years ago, 1984. He said, there is no dispute about who is in majority. Poor people, poor are in majority. He calculated how many billion people where are poor. Except for very small number of people in South Africa, every African nation, everyone in Africa was far, far, far below the poverty level. In those days, more than 60% people in India were below the poverty level. In those days, more than 40% people in China were below the poverty level. Then you put together Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines, Laos, Cambodia, Burma, many, many, many countries in South America, Latin America, many, many people right here in the United States of America, in Canada, and even in Western Europe. When you put together who is in majority, poor people. And all of us, professors and all of students, graduate students, PhD students, we're just shocked. We had never thought that this is unique definition. Then discussion began. Then that's when he started telling that, see here, he gave very amazing example that people from Afghanistan, people from Pakistan, people from African countries, they come to America, people from Burma, Myanmar, people from Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, Philippines. Once they manage to come here to America, within 5, 10, 20 years' time, their financial needs are completed, and then they are in a totally different status. How many of those who rise above the undesirable circumstances in their own society, how many of them really reflect on the lives of those who are still not out of poverty? Many people, they just simply, they talk very nicely, very sweetly. They talk about African issues. They talk about the issues of colors, genders, etc., etc. But when it comes to actually doing something, they could be a little bit more proactive. No? This is what, if you look at the life of great masters like Buddha, what did he do? First thing, he paid attention to his own mind. He paid attention to the circumstances which were just around him. Upon realizing very simple fact that first he has to know who he himself was. For that he made effort. As the story goes, he studied with so many teachers and masters. He committed himself to intense austerities, yoga sadhana. When you look at the most prominent book on the Hatha Yoga, which is called Hatha Yoga Pradipika, there are 36 masters. Buddha is one of them. Buddha is one of the top Siddha masters of Hatha Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, Tantra Yoga. And after he achieved what he wished to achieve, which is enlightenment, samadhi, then what did he do? He undertook a project to amplify the voices of the majority, the global majority, of course, he chose the northeastern part of India as his karma bhumi, the place for his teachings. And then from there, during his lifetime and beyond his lifetime, things expanded. So this is what I think you invited me to discuss this matter with you. And I'm quite sure your expectation is to hear from you, not about the socio-political dimension of global majority, but rather the spiritual dimension of this issue, which begins with our own personal transformation. Yeah. Okay? As many scriptures, I don't need to quote all of them, but yes, like Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Sutra, and many other texts tell us that we are living in a very intricately knit web of life. Mm-hmm. What is out there, that is in here. What we do, what we feel, how we speak, how we act in our personal life, it impacts the world outside us. And also the world outside us has great impact on how we act, how we behave. And when it comes to really see a true transformation and lasting transformation, then we come to realize that the process has to begin from somewhere.
Yeah.
And always it has to begin from here. If we try to see it over there, then yes, if our path is path of activism, then of course that's okay, all right. But if you are high caliber activists, then very soon we'll come to realize, just like Mahatma Gandhi did, Gautam Buddha did, just like many other great teachers and masters did, that it has to begin from here. And somehow also we have to engage ourselves with the rest of humanity, beginning with who are just next to us.
Yeah.
Help them, receive some help from them, inspire them, be inspired, by them. And that is how you start.
It makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And this theme is such a recurring theme. The example you just gave of Buddha is our own life as well.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really reflected on deeply as we were talking about this conference was how the very idea of trying to be present to and be a force for positive change in a world, in a landscape that has a density, so many challenges. This idea of adversity, the idea of trying to find our place, can be a bit of a weighty subject. And the pace of life is so fast, there's so much coming at us, that often we just try to manage the situation. But the only way to really see how any challenging circumstances can be transformed into an opportunity for growth is to somehow actually just harness the force of time, slow time, and find a bubble of our own reality. To me, that's this whole idea, what His Holiness Dalai Lama mentioned that one phrase that your job is to find peace. Finding peace seems like a very lofty goal, something almost unattainable, something that we just hear about. But the truth is, it doesn't get any more real and practical and simple. Creating a little bubble, it might be a very modest bubble of our own personal world that is infused with a genuine peace. It radically transforms our ability to not only face the world, but to joyfully see whatever the world is presenting to us, those elements which are challenging, which are painful, which require constructive, skillful action, and then wisely do something about it. One of my experiences many people's experiences coming to our shrine here in Honesdale and also specifically in India and Khajuraho is that it's almost like a time warp, that you enter that space and time slows down. And I really reflected on why and what that might have to do with broader life. Because people always comment that they feel replenished, mentally more clear, able to be positive, able to accelerate their personal practice, to think positive ideas and to do wonderful things. Very much like you said, Buddha was able to after he found his own inner peace. And what really came to mind to me is that it might not be that any of us have achieved enlightenment like Buddha had, but we were able to get a glimpse. We were able to come in touch with something that was so simple yet so essentially powerful that it was almost like time slowed down. The normal kind of process of being pulled in 1,000 different directions, being a little bit overloaded and overwhelmed by the very weight of the world, that phenomena changed. And we were able to find something deep within us that was profoundly peaceful. And in many cases, when we find that, we don't even actually use the word adversity or challenge anymore. We simply see the reality around us, and we're happily present to it. That kind of capacity really is the greatest gift. And it seems like the only long-term, lasting way to be present in this world, to do something constructive. And that's the real gift that I found in my own life through meditation, that somehow you tap into certain space inside that begins to change the way that we see ourselves and we see the world. And it begins in the most humble and simple of ways, just by working with our breath, working with a certain awareness of quality of breath in the subtle dimension, pranic quality, and how the mind naturally wants to turn inward. It's not that that peace is imposed on us. It comes from within. And it sets up a dynamic cycle that really seems to just propel itself, and it takes us in amazing places.
Yeah.
And one of the questions that was so pertinent on my mind that I was hoping you would also shed some more light on in context of this topic for tonight is how once we get our initial momentum, positive momentum, once we get inspired, how do we understand what are the deeper causes of unrest, both personally and in the collective world? And what does the message of Yoga Sutra 133 have to do with doing something about these deeper causes of unrest?
Ishan, to understand all the ins and outs of divine providence is not so easy.
Doesn't sound easy.
No, it's not. For last thousands of years, great seekers, great adepts, belonging to so many different traditions from the East, West, ancient, modern, they've been trying their best to find answer to this question, which is completely free from any debate, which does not have any room for any debate anymore. So far, people have not found it. What is important to understand here, which again, I'm coming from the Yoga Sutra, this karmic entanglement, and I love this term, quantum entanglement. I call it karmically quantum entanglement. It's so complex, so powerful, so unavoidable, and that we are in it. We are recipient of this entanglement. We can call that this is that we are victim of this entanglement,
or a beneficiary
of this entanglement. Yeah. It's totally up to us how we look at it. But the truth is that it is very, very, very powerful quantum entanglement. So therefore, spending time to see what is really the final cause in terms of its metaphysics behind it, that does not yield much result. However, at a practical level, we can clearly see the relations between cause and effect. Again, I will give you some example in this context. This professor I'm referring to, I think he was Japanese. He gave an example of 150 years of history, starting from late 1800s, early 1900s. That how the voices were already emerging. People had already come to this realization that if we ever wish to live a happy, healthy, and peaceful life, and if we really wish to have a society which is grounded in true peace, then better we have to learn how to serve and share with each other. Yeah. And for that, we have to bring down some of the wall that existed between those who are oppressors, those who are oppressed, those who are very rich and those who are very poor. The divide between people of different colors was really not that significant. It was more like who is dominant and who is being dominated. So during the colonial period, that's what exactly was happening. The voices were coming out of human minds and hearts that stop it. And then the powerful ones were saying, better you shut up. This thing continued for a while. That where did it lead us? It led us to World War I. It was painful. Out of pain and out of competition, World War I came to an end, but fundamental problems were still there. People took next 20 years or 30 years, 25 years as a time to prepare for next World War II, for the World War II. It was very, very painful. However, what comes after that, something very significant. Post-World War II is our modern 20th century, 21st century renaissance started in post-World War II because there was a sustained effort to find a peaceful way of living with each other. That's called, the period of, a new era in American society, new era in European society. And that's what caused everywhere on the planet to bring the colonial rule to an end. China got independence, India got independence, and all the Southeast Asian countries got independence. African countries were on the roll. And here in America, in post-World War II, was such a, as well as in Europe, Beatles came out from that, So the point is here, once we hear and begin to heed this true voice of the global majority, which is the poor people, then suddenly there is a paradigm shift. Yeah. Then we come to see, hey, even though law of cause and effect is very powerful, and definitely nothing happens in the world without cause. And yet, what is the most immediate cause of our pain and sorrow and suffering is our own karma, our own action. Sometimes it's our inaction toward certain situations. Sometimes it is our apathy towards certain situations leads us to a painful experience. And sometimes it's lack of active participation in something which is quite noble that leads to pain and suffering and unrest in the society and in our personal life, family life, community life, social life. Once we recognize that, then begins the next step. What should we do with it? And that's what Buddha said. Yes, there is pain. Now you have come to know. Next step is try to see what is the cause of it. And don't go too far. Don't go too far. But rather just in your immediate surrounding, in your near past. Oh, this was the situation that led us to experience what we are experiencing now here. And if this particular course continues, then consequences in the future will be similar to what we are experiencing today here. As soon as you recognize that, then comes the next. What is beyond then? Well, there is a place which is very beautiful, which is very joyful, which is free from all pains and sorrow. And here is how we can achieve it. So this particular idea that now I know the dynamics of our karmic entanglement. Now I know that we must stop somewhere this sense of me, and you, and east is east, and west is west, blacks are blacks, and whites are white, and men are men, and women are women, and they are they, and we are us. Once we come to realize that this is not as important as finding peace within. And once that realization comes, then how? Well, that's what Yoga Sutra is all about. That's what Bhagavad Gita is all about. That's what Buddha is all about. That's what Patanjali is all about. And in fact, that's what all of us are all about. Those who organize this kind of conferences, those who are attending this kind of conferences, they already knows what to do. Now it's the matter of pinpointing it. Munde motir bhinna. All of us are individuals. And as in individuals, we have our own very unique tastes and interests. There are some elements in us that is like common to all, but there are some other elements which is not common, that they are unique. And here then we come to realize, and this is summary of the Yoga Sutra I'm telling you, like there are positive tendencies, love, compassion, kindness, forgiveness, giving, loving, serving, sharing, and then other side, cruelty, ego, attachment, desire, animosity, revenge, etc., etc. When you mix these two, negative and positive, these two stocks of tendencies, and mix, and what comes out of it, that what emerges out of this portion is called human being. We are in part very wonderful souls, in part we have some acquired tendencies, but all of us have one thing in common, that we have potential to rise above our undesirable tendencies, and that's called yoga.
Yeah.
Making an effort to rise above is called yoga. And then with yoga sadhana, we further expand the scope of our consciousness. As the scope of our consciousness expands, automatically our world becomes more and more inclusive. We become bigger, better, brighter, more enlightened, more empowered, and automatically the space really expands. Now we have capacity to include all, exclude none, love all, and hate none. That's sadhana, that's yoga. And in that regard, I go back again to Buddha and Patanjali. And that's what your question is. And our description also tells us that Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, and Upeksha. You can clearly see that all of us, to a great extent, in my case, I started other way around. Which way? I started without knowing that I was practicing yoga. I started yoga from a spiritual angle. That was due to my own personal karma or where I was born, my family background. And in fact, that was also true with you to some extent. But then finally I ended up exactly asana, pranayama, bandhas, mudras, those things. Many of you started with asana, pranayama, but deep down, there was a seeker in you. And it's that seeker in you started asking questions. That now I've been practicing my asana for such a long time. And to some extent, I see a great deal of transformation. But I wish to know what else should I do so that I can accelerate my growth. And that's what made you to study Bhagavad Gita or Yoga Sutra. That's what led you to practice breathing or meditation or some other techniques or of bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, or different kinds of yoga. That's what inspired you to look for the spiritual element, spiritual component in yoga sadhana, because at somewhere you yourself, just as myself, came to realize that this transformation has to be much more deeper than the transformation which I am seeing just at my muscular level. No? And once that realization comes, then we realize, yes, what is bothering us is a sense of fear, anger, hatred, jealousy, and this whole idea that how come people are not nice to me? We come to see that the list of complaints is quite long. And as soon as we try to sit, relax, meditate from the bottom of our mind, these negative tendencies start popping up. It means I must find solution to those subtle tendencies, anger, hatred, fear, attachment, etc. Where should we begin? Well, come to realize that whoever you seem to be very mad at, whoever you feel is the source of your problem, that person, in all probability, you will find that person is the one who you love you very much. This is very bizarre tendency of anger. Whomever we love the most, we get upset at that person. We get mad at person. Oh my God, I never thought that way. And therefore, here is the antidote to all those subtle causes of our inner disturbances. And that antidote is Maitri.
Friendship.
Or attitude of friendliness. Karuna, when we are relatively in better shape financially or spiritually or health-wise, or in terms of honor, dignity, name, fame, etc. Suddenly we find ourselves belonging to a totally new class of human beings. Then our own fellow beings, those who are not so fortunate, not so lucky, really we become so insensitive, not realize that this insensitivity to our fellow beings may or may not be that much affecting them adverse, in a negative way, as much it is affecting us internally. That soft and tender and loving and juicy aspect of our own being is now being malnourished. That realization comes. So that is antidote to the cruel and beastly fellow inside us. Similarly, karuna mudita, when our loved ones are doing great job, they have now 3 cars, they have 2 houses, they go on international travels, and here we are still struggling to get by. We hate that. Each time when we hear our relatives having such a wonderful time and we are not, our happiness is gone.
Yeah.
So we have to cultivate the antidote to that. Is it right thing, wrong thing? That's totally irrelevant. What is important here is to understand that how is it affecting me, influencing me.
It's such a fascinating thing because it might seem like the solution here is to re-equalize.
Yeah.
But what you're suggesting is that just learning to be happy with that potential inequality or inequity.
That's right.
And happy in the sense of not allowing our mind to be upset or angry about it, to bring forward the potential for some kind of dialogue.
That's right.
Because without that, how can there be any equality if we're actually unhappy and angry and going after others? So it's amazing that, the process of equilibrium that Yoga Sutra 133 is talking about is one that very much is about finding an equilibrium within, a mental kind of balance. For so many people, the idea of peace is a very passive, inert phenomena. It took me a long time to really reflect on and realize that 133 is actually talking about a living, active form of peace.
Yeah.
That learning to be friendly and cultivate that attitude of friendliness towards those who are happy, it takes a lot of work. And it's a very vibrantly, actively peaceful mind, which is not sluggish and sleepy, but is peaceful in the form of being happy for others. Being friendly towards those around us who are happy. Being compassionate towards those rather than judgmental or cruel to those who have less. And this last one about, you just mentioned the mudita, happiness towards those who are more virtuous, more successful, is a tricky one, a really tricky one. And the only way to build a bridge between those who have and those who have less or have very little at all is not to bulldoze everything, but to build. And the only way to build is to at least first not have that predisposition of judgment or frustration.
That's right.
And amazingly, the defenses seem to really go down then.
That's right.
People on the other side then have a far greater possibility for seeing us for whatever we are. Otherwise, immediately the walls go up from both sides and very little progress happens, which to those of us who are really trying to see the world as a better place is very demoralizing when we keep working and we don't see things progress. And it can seem like we're just retreating to ourselves and only let's just focus on our inner peace. But I can really respect and value what you were sharing, what Buddha said, that you have to find your own inner peace, inner strength first before you can be an agent of change outside. It's not retreating in the face of immense obstacles to bring this positive change outside. We don't have the tools and the means to actually do anything until we genuinely can be happy for those who are doing really, really well according to how the world defines that. Even if that doing well, in many cases, is actually at the expense of many others, that should not be the primary concern from the perspective of Yoga Sutra 133.
That's right.
It should be, can we maintain a genuine inner happiness, a state of mind where we truly are happy for those who are more powerful and successful, and not have the first inclination be to assess and judge.
Yeah.
And it really goes to the last one about upeksha. I really loved your commentary on this, how often this word in English is translated as indifference, which I always really didn't appreciate. I just didn't feel like it was what we as yogis should be trying to cultivate. And the quote in your book is that upeksha means to see clearly, to see in right perspective. And to me, it was such a liberating idea that especially if we want to be an active, responsible citizen of the world and be a force for positive change. That's diametrically opposed to the idea of being indifferent and ignoring. But we need to not react, definitely, is what this is saying.
That's what it is.
See something very clearly and understand first before we judge, and hopefully never really judge, but wisely act. And this idea of seeing clearly then takes on so many layers, because the truth is that I don't think any of us can ever see anything completely clearly, but through our practice, through experience, through guidance, through friendship, through sangha, many, many, many individuals seeing through each other's eyes together. It's like you get a pair of glasses that takes you to not just 2020, but maybe even 2040. You can see further when you all see together clearly.
You know, Ishan, about upeksha, I should add a little bit to it. When Buddha attained enlightenment, and at some point, he decided to leave this world, cast off his body. Then he started reflecting that what made previous masters, previous Buddhas in this world to stay in this world after they attained enlightenment. Well, it was very clear. It was the compassion.
Yeah.
Concern for those who are still stranded on the path. So Buddha decided to walk in the footsteps of the previous Buddhas and lead a life of service. And he made showing the path of inner peace, tranquility, and inner stillness as his top priority. So one day he was sitting at a peak in Rajgiri, a peak which is right next to the palace of the king of Rajgiri, Ajatashatru. So he gave a name to the peak where he was sitting and just about to teach the system of meditation. This system of meditation I'm talking about is what we call Vishoka meditation, but it is very beautifully described by Buddha in his great text called Saddharma Pundarika Sutra, the Lotus Sutra. So this story comes from the Lotus Sutra. So people asked him that how to meditate. Well, so he said, see here, we are sitting on a vulture peak. People said, what? Vulture peak? There are no vultures around. Then Buddha said, yes. We are living in a very bizarre world where one human being is attempting to eat another human being. And they call it life. They call it business. While living in this kind of world where selfishness, ego, self-interest, where me dominates human consciousness. While living in that kind of world and surrounded by such people, we are trying to find our path. At that time, yes, let the world made of vultures be little. There is nothing to judge. There is nothing to say. My goal here is just to, I have done everything in terms of Maitri, Karuna, Mudita, friendliness, happiness, compassion. And just because I'm trying to abide with the principles of friendliness, compassion, and cheerfulness, it does not mean that the world is really going to care for me. And yet, I must not take it as a complaint. There is nothing to complain about it. This principle applies when we are doing our practice. We know what reality is. We know the difference between good and bad. We know the difference between friends and foes. And yet, this ability to sit still and not be affected by anything good and bad and right and wrong, correct and incorrect, but rather just to attend that object of our meditation. For that, we need upeksha. There is problem in Ukraine. There is problem with, in Russia. There is problem between India and China. There is problem between us and they. There is problem there in Israel and Gaza. There is problem in the United States. Tell me tell me a place, tell me a time when there has not been some problem. And yet, even during such times, such places, there are people, those who figured out how to create an island of, peace. Small, tiny little bubble. And that bubble, you could keep that bubble just for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. But in those 10, 20 minutes of time, you gain so much energy, so much nourishment that now you have the time and energy to stand firm, fight and conquer all the circumstances which surround you for remaining 23 hours.
Yeah.
That's what the beauty is. The beauty of this yoga sadhana, spirituality is all about. Yeah. That definitely, so far during the time of Krishna, Rama, Buddha, Jesus Christ, Moses, if they were not able to eliminate all the conflicts, all the problems, all the unrest, then definitely we should not boast too much about our endeavor. But just as they were able to create, a relatively small or bigger island of excellence, we can create that kind of island too.
Yeah. It's like a breath of fresh air, and you get your life breath back. Like that, when they say when you're in an airplane, put your own mask on first in event of any turbulence before you help someone else. We need the breath of air ourselves. Yeah. It doesn't actually mean that we're being self-centered, but when we have breath for our brain and our consciousness to be fully present and alert, everything is possible.
Everything is possible.
Yeah.
And that's what this kind of, this is our modern way of Sangha. And like, you may have heard this beautiful prayer that means most of times, Buddhist monks, they do the prayer, Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Dhammam Sharanam Gacchami, Sangham Sharanam Gacchami. So this is Sangha. This is community of like-minded people. So this is our modern way of creating a community of like-minded people. It's called digital community. From this digital world, then we get some inspiration. Then we come out from this digital bubble, and then we seek for some non-digital living atmosphere of satsanga, the community of like-minded people. Even for a couple of days here and there, we interact with each other, inspire each other, get inspired from each other, and then go and put all that inspiration into practice. Then you suddenly notice that suddenly you got one more friend, 2 more friends, 20 more friends. And so this way, we become light to ourselves and light to others. This is another aspect of yoga which we must remember. This is what keeps us going. Otherwise, even in the realm of our yoga sadhana, yoga practice, meditation, spirituality, we may suffer from a sense of isolation and self-alienation. And so therefore, this is what very many great masters, Buddha, Patanjali, and everybody has told us, be light to yourself and be light to the world.
Maybe that's the positive way of looking at the quantum karmic entanglement, that we're together and it's a great joy to be together. And when we can be together in the light of the principles of Yoga Sutra 133 of,
in this
friendliness,
regard, I will
makes
also
a big difference.
I will also remind that I wrote right during the time of the war between the United States and Iraq. I wrote a book, Why We Fight. So please, if you want, you can look at. I've tried to explain the Yoga Sutra, Chapter 1, Sutra 33, in a different context, different light, where it's like a spiritual solution to our day-to-day problems and concerns, including, the political, kind of conflicts.
It's very timely, even though that was 1990, still very relevant today.
Right.
But we're coming up on 1 hour. I think it's probably almost time to conclude for this evening. Any final thoughts?
That's what I will remind. Buddham Saranam Gacchami. Let us take refuge in Buddha, the enlightened ones, inspired ones, awakened ones. Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. Let us take refuge in Dharma, true understanding of our life and our life in the natural world. And Sangham Saranam Gacchami. Let us take refuge in Sangha by forming collective consciousness and by nourishing collective consciousness, which gives room to all and creates an environment, offers an environment for our inner growth, as well as growth in the external world. That's called community of inspired people. Let us take refuge in that Sangha, in that kind of spiritually enlightened community. Thank you very much. God bless you. I don't know whether there is any question on the question.
I think
I
we're
don't
all
believe
very
we
full.
have any questions, Panditji. So we will complete
Thank you.
here. Thank you both, Panditji and Ishan. It's been such a lovely talk with you both, and giving us a lot to think about and to sit with and to practice. So I'm very appreciative of that. Thank you both.
Thank you,
And thank
Kaveri.
you.
So wonderful.
Yeah. Be well.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for this evening's final session of our Amplified series, Adversity to Opportunity, Lessons for Navigating a Turbulent World from an Ancient Wisdom Tradition, with Panditji Rajmani Tigunait and Ishan Tigunait. A special thanks to you both, Panditji and Ishan, and to our donors for supporting this third year of our Amplify Voices Global Majority Series. And thanks again to you all for your presence with us online. Your support is vital to our Amplify series. Together, we uplift voices of global majority dedicated to dismantling injustice and nurturing our planet. Your donations power this transformative work. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to be in this space with you all this week. We look forward to being with you again online again in the near future. Until then, peace, blessings, be well, and amplify. Good night, everyone. And thank you.